Anyway, so I think of The Office, seasons of The Office. I love The Office. And you can just jump into a season anytime you want. Or you can't really jump into the season. You can jump into an episode anytime you want. But when you put all the seasons together, the show becomes amazing. I've watched it with people. You're watching Jim and Pam's wedding, and I'm crying like a schoolgirl. And they're just like, oh, what's the big deal? Because you haven't watched all the seasons. You got to watch how the characters develop. See, in relationships, it's the same thing. We all go through seasons of relationships. We're single for a while. We might be dating, or we might be this, I don't know what I am. Or you might be married. You might be 5 years married. Molly and I are in a season. We have 3 kids, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And kind of the idea of seasons is if you don't know how to navigate a season, you don't know how to get to the next season. So our hope tonight is that we could help you, whatever season you're in, navigate the seasons of relationships.
Yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about dating because in the culture we live in, that's how you start a relationship, right? But dating is actually a relatively new phenomenon, about 75 to 100 years old. Before that, they had arranged marriages. So just like the Bible doesn't talk about, dating, it doesn't talk about Facebook or Netflix, what we have to do is look at what the Bible says about marriage. In the Bible, marriage is the committed relationship that God intended for people to enter. So what we want to do tonight is look at what the Bible has to say about marriage, work our way backwards to get our principles then for dating. So the ultimate reason that we date is to find a spouse. If the Bible's ultimate committed relationship is marriage, the ultimate reason that we want to date then is to find someone that we could potentially marry. Something I want you guys to remember tonight is this. Let me go back here. A key point is you will marry someone you date, and how you date will impact your future marriage and relationship. So you will marry someone you date, and how you date will impact your future spouse and relationship with them. And it may sound so basic to say, you're going to marry someone you date. Hey, Molly, that's kind of obvious. But I think it's easy to kind of just, end up casually sliding into a relationship, hanging out more, becoming more committed. It just becomes comfortable. And before you know it, you're married. And maybe that wasn't even somebody that you would have wanted to marry, but you just end up in this marriage relationship without even planning on being there. So if you're bonding with somebody that's not going to be your future wife or husband someday, you're bonding with somebody that's going to be somebody else's future wife or husband someday. So when it comes to marriage, we want to look forward with our thinking. We want to see what kind of a marriage do I want to have someday and work our way backwards. It's just like working out. Say you wake up and you decide, I want to become more fit. I want to lose 10 pounds, okay? So you come up with a plan. How am I going to accomplish this? And then you work your way backwards to kind of decide how that's going to happen. I think about this, Jason. I say this quote all the time. If you're around me, you'll hear me say it. Everyone ends up somewhere in life. Few people end up somewhere on purpose. So if you don't have a vision for what kind of marriage you want to have, any relationship will get you there. So what we want to talk about tonight is how we can create an awesome vision for a marriage someday and help you guys make a plan to achieve that.
Cool. So as we talk about marriage, so our first message tonight is just kind of a little bit about marriage, and then we're going to work back to dating, and the very last talk is on sex. So just stay with me to that one, because that one's juicy. It's really juicy. It's going to be great. And so tonight we're going to just look at the Bible. At the Brook, we believe that God's word, the Bible, it brings us timeless wisdom. And if we could just look into what God says about relationships and how he created relationships, we will discover the purpose of marriage, and we can then work backwards and figure out how to date. And so the Bible verse we're going to look at, and you guys have a handout. I put all our notes on that handout, and we got a little notepad for you as well. If you want to take any notes, you're more than welcome to do that. The Bible verse that we're going to look at today is Matthew 19, and this is Jesus talking about marriage. Jesus actually was never married. So if you're single and you're like, man, I don't know about, it's kind of frustrating that you're not married. Jesus was never married. But he talked on marriage, and this is what he said in Matthew 19, 4-6. It says this: "Haven't you read," he replied, "that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So we're going to just walk through this verse real quick and kind of look through what's the anchor of marriage.
Yeah, so the first thing we want to talk about is that God is creator. Here it says that God created man and he created woman and he created marriage. This was his intention from the beginning. And when someone's creation lives out how it's supposed to be, it's awesome. I mean, take this iPad, for example. Steve Jobs created the iPad. And when I use it to text, to send emails, to FaceTime people during COVID, I did this all the time to make, Zoom calls. It's awesome. But say we go back, 20 years before the iPad ever existed, and I get this gift in the mail. I open it up and I'm like, Jason, what an awesome chopping board. And I cut my vegetables and chicken on it. I mean, that's just pointless. It's not going to work out. It's going to ruin the iPad. So we want to know what the intention for marriage was created, right?
Those screens are pretty good, though. I don't know if I'd run it.
Maybe it wouldn't ruin it. Maybe it wouldn't ruin it. But yeah, we were created for relationships. I mean, even babies, babies want to be held. They want connection. And my son, Judah, who's 6, he just loves and craves friendships. And then even in another sense, in a romantic way, we desire relationship. I think of my husband. He had his first kiss on the playground when he was 6. Anyone else out there on the playground when he was 6 years old?
Come on, people.
Yeah. We desire even just this romantic relationship to be connected to somebody else. And I just want to tell you guys, you should never feel bad for that. God created you that way. He created you to long for relationship with another, and it's an awesome thing. But before we can get there to be in a relationship, we have to go through a process normally of being single. And this is where we learn and grow and prepare for marriage. It's often the part we want to skip over. But marriage is not even the end goal. The end goal is having a connected relationship with God. It talks in the Bible that, we will go through singleness, like I said, and in heaven even, we won't be married someday. But what we're talking about tonight, about relationships, we'll have relationships here on earth and in heaven forever. And the truth is, most of you will be married someday, probably.
So this is ad lib, but
yeah.
Our 4-year-old got her first kiss at the pumpkin patch the other day. So their parents are actually here right now. So Ron and Carissa, Chester stole a kiss from them. So our second foundation of marriage is that a relationship is to be united. So in the verse it says this: for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So what's the purpose of marriage? The purpose of marriage is to become united. It's to become one flesh. And what that one flesh means is that it's a committed relationship where it's emotionally, physically, and spiritually intertwined. That you are connected in the deepest level where you're united together. And marriage in the Bible is an institution actually under God. It's ordained by God. God created it, and it's to be the most deep committed relationship that we have. And so God kind of calls this, he kind of compares it, he calls marriage as a covenant relationship. And that word covenant, we really don't hear much in our society, but I kind of like comparing it with this. It's like the difference between a consumer and a covenant relationship. So what is a consumer relationship? A consumer relationship is a relationship that as long as a certain vendor meets your needs, you stay in that relationship. But when a different vendor comes along and gives you a better price or maybe a better product, you switch from this vendor to this vendor. This is kind of typical in a lot of relationships now, is that we take what is best for us, and when that person doesn't meet our needs, we say, peace out, and you go to the next relationship. That is a consumer-based relationship. A covenant relationship is like this. It's like a parent with their child. And so in our society, we kind of see a covenant relationship like this. I'm never like, you know what, Judah, I'm going to exchange you for someone else, my son. I'm like, I found a better kid out there that I'm going to leave you and go with this kid. No, you would never do that, because I'm in a covenant relationship with Judah. I am connected with him. I am committed to him. We are one. He is my DNA. Like I would never leave him. And so a covenant relationship is what marriage is supposed to be. Like Tim said, we think of the divorce rate. And as I think of that covenant relationship, if you're not in that, or you've been in that, or you're in this season, maybe you're in that relationship of marriage and then you got divorced, any of those seasons, this can get you kind of worried about being in a committed relationship. You're like, okay, so I gotta be in this covenant relationship? That sounds crazy. And so I think that we feel that way because of two reasons. One is we all have baggage of divorce. I don't know about you, but I have baggage of divorce. My parents are divorced. I bet you everyone in here, at least probably your family, someone in your family is divorced. And there's this baggage on your life. And you're like, I don't want my relationship to end like that. Or maybe you were divorced and you're like, I don't want to go back to that relationship. And so we tend not to want to be in a committed relationship. Here's the other reason, I think, why our generation is getting married less and less and less and committed less and less and less. We like our plans. We like control of our life. Okay, so you know what my dream was? To sail the 7 seas and to be a fishing guide. You know what Molly does on the seas? Throw up. Like the first time we went on a sailboat, she threw up. And so that kind of sounds silly, but so many of us, the older we get, the more we're stuck in our plans and we're like, I'm gonna live life like this. I'm gonna do it this way. And literally no one fits into our plans. And see, a covenant relationship has to go, okay, I'm gonna put all my energy in those plans and I'm gonna be willing to be united to my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the third foundation we want to talk about is that it's intended to be a forever relationship. You guys have been to weddings and you've heard it said, what God has brought together, let no man separate. It's intended to go on forever. I remember when we walked into the courthouse to get our marriage license signed, and there was this little old lady, and she handed it to us and said, this is forever and ever and ever. And we were like, oh my gosh. We were cracking up about it, but it's true. It's like this relationship that's supposed to last forever. And when it says what God has joined together, implies that it was God who brought this relationship together to begin with. So if you're in a relationship that you tried to force on your own or kind of nudge your way into or lie your way into, or maybe it was somebody who doesn't follow God, you could be off to a hard start because it said it's God who brings a lasting relationship together. Otherwise, we're just trying to do it in our own strength, and that will probably fail us in the end. Then what you're doing is you're asking God to bless something that he didn't originally intend. So you get into this relationship, you're doing your own thing, and then all of a sudden you say, oh God, will you bless this relationship? When in the first place, you didn't ask him, is this what you want for me? Is this what you want for me? So I encourage you guys, if you're in a relationship or thinking about dating, ask God, God, is it you who brought this together, or did I force my way in? See, I was the girl for most of my dating life that tried to force my way in. I just happened to be at the party of the guy that I liked, and I just happened to love the same football team, even though I don't even know anything about football. You know what I mean, right? You're out there too. And what this ended up bringing me down. I felt bad about myself. I was frustrated, and I just got fed up with it. One day, I remember walking, and I was mad, and I said, you know what, God? I'm tired of this. Me trying to force my way in is not getting me what I want. So I'm going to know it's the guy, and you're going to bring him to me. You can talk to God like that, okay? And lo and behold, a couple months later, I'm in Breckenridge at home for the summer, and I meet Jason.
Amazing looking guy.
Amazing looking guy, shoveling manure at my parents' ranch. I meet him on my front doorstep, okay? My sister, who wasn't following God at the time, said, Molly, they don't normally just come to your front doorstep, okay? But the rest is history, all right? I got Jason, and he pursued me. We got to know each other. It was awesome. And I'm just here to tell you today, if you feel like you're that person that has to force your way in, give it up. Give up control to God. He wants to write a better story for you than you even have planned for yourself.
That's good stuff. Yeah. So a committed relationship's a covenant relationship. And like Molly said, you will marry someone you date. So we love like dystopian type movies and like things like that. So we had never got into Hunger Games. We never watched it until like a month ago. And it was really weird because we watched all 4 and it was right before the election. And I'm like, oh, this is really happening. Like, we're screwed. I'm like, how do we got to start preparing. I stayed up till midnight thinking of our exit strategy. Like, where are we going when the world burns? And,
you kind of loved it.
I love it. I love thinking like that because I love like, how do we prepare for when like all power goes out? And 100 years ago, when winter comes, you have to go get food. You have to get enough warm things. You have to get wood for fire. You have to prepare for that season. So many relationships, I believe, die because they don't prepare for each season. they get stuck in a season. You get stuck in singleness. You get stuck in, we're like, I get stuck in Hinge. I get stuck in dating. How do you actually walk through that? So our prayer, our hope is that we could help you guys. We're going to give you 3 dynamics of every great relationship and how to take that next step wherever you're at. And so before we jump into that, we're going to talk a little bit about dating. We want you to check out this video.